Hello everyone and welcome to the 4th episode in the Real Life Racing 2015 series, and as we come onto this formation lap before the start of the first race, you can probably notice that the camera isn't as clear as what it could be, and the reason for that is that it's starting to rain. As you can see there, the pace kart in front is having a few issues getting around the track, and this is literally just starting. So we'd done the qualifying in complete dry conditions, and it is just starting to rain as we come round to the formation lap. As you can see here, it's not the easiest conditions to deal with, but it's something that you've got to get used to quickly, and those who get used to it the quickest will do the best on a race like this. So yeah, it's tricky for the start of the very first race of the day, as you can see here, but I managed to get a good start, as you can see just there, get straight up into first place. I was actually starting in second, but I'll explain a little bit more about that in a second. So I get straight up into first place, managed to control it around the first corner, and it is tricky, this first lap, because this is the first lap that we've all done in conditions where it's a bit wet. You know, there was a few accidents going on behind me. It's just a case that it catches people out. You know, everyone's done all of the corners in fully dry conditions, and suddenly it rains on the formation lap, so you go into a corner at the same speed as what you did in the dry, and you're going to spin off. So you've got to be wary of that. Now, it was just a light rain shower, and as you can see, it's not really wet as such. It's just a little bit slippy for this first lap. But as soon as we get this first lap done, it actually stops raining, and we're able to take dry lines. Now I'm already taking some dry lines at certain points around the track, even though it's a little bit slippy, and that really, being able to do that allowed me to get a bit of a decent gap to the guys in second, third, fourth and further behind, because whilst I was sort of managing to find the grip a little bit better than those behind me, I was able to get that a bit of extra speed. And as we're coming around this corner, I realised that, you know, the rain has completely stopped, and it's reasonably dry at this point, and I'm able to just go under normal speed. So as you can see, you know, the first lap there was a 1 minute 20.4, which is about 14 to 15 seconds slower than what we would normally be doing on a fully dry lap. And you'll see that the next lap is a lot quicker. So that's the difference, you know, just a slight bit of rain, just making things a little bit more slippy. It really does make a bit of a difference in terms of lap time. But as you can see already, you know, I'm really pushing on at this point for the second lap, and it is completely dry. Well, certainly being able to, you know, reasonably decent grip and taking some dry lines. So I started this race in second place. Now, I'd actually qualified in first, but the marshals who were sort of sorting out the grid made a bit of a mistake, and I ended up starting in second. But in qualifying, I actually set the best lap time that I've ever done throughout the entirety of me racing here, with a 1 minute 5.818. I've never had a 1 minute 5 lap time before. My previous best was a 1 minute 6.1, I believe, and that was in the previous season of this series. It's a shame that I don't have the recording, because I don't record qualifying, so it is a shame that I don't have the recording of that 1 minute 5. I actually managed to get 2 1 minute 5 lap times in the qualifying. My best was just the 1 minute 5.8, and yeah, it was nice to get a lap time like that. You know, it's a nice little bonus. I'm not sort of, as I said, I've never had a 1 minute 5 before this, so I didn't realise that at the time during these races. But yeah, I going back and looking back at it, I got a 1 minute 5.8, so that's pretty good, and I was pretty happy with that, considering that is, you know, a reasonably quick lap time. So here we are, we've won the first race. We managed to get the win in the first race there, as you've seen there. Just gradually was able to pull away after that great start, and here we are on race 2. So as you can see, it is significantly more wet for race 2. It had rained quite significantly in between the first and the second races. Now I'll also explain why there's only 16 people in this race when normally we're closer to 30. I'll explain that during this race. But yeah, because I won the previous race, I am starting on pole position here. So I've won these heat races before, you know. In the previous episode I was talking about how I'd never won a final. When it comes to these heat races, I have won these before, so, you know, I'm not sort of inexperienced when it comes to starting on pole position, and normally I get quite good starts when I'm on pole, but on this occasion I didn't get the best start because it's right on the inside where it's the most wet. But you'll see what happens as we round this last corner. But it is a lot more wet, so it's a lot more slippy. The lap times are going to be much slower. As you can see, they're very slippy at that point. Now I do hit into him there, but I've got the speed on the straight here, and he basically gives me a signal to sort of go in front. Now the reason for that is that he's in the heavyweight championship. As you can see, I made a mistake on the first corner and he ended up getting through anyway by just going a little bit too wide. But we've both managed to get a bit of a gap to the guys behind us, so that's okay. But he's actually in the heavyweight championship. Now, I'm not really racing against him. You know, it was funny that we had this kind of dynamic. It's the first time that we've really had this and experienced this throughout this season or the last season, because, you know, lightweight and heavyweight championships weren't introduced in the previous season. So it's the first time that we've really had this dynamic where I'm currently, even though I'm in second place, I'm getting maximum points for this race because the guy in front of me is in the heavyweight championship. So it doesn't matter that I don't need to overtake him. I'm still going to get maximum points, and it's the same for him. If I end up overtaking him and he comes in second place, he's getting maximum points for the heavyweight championship. You know, both of us here are going to be getting maximum points for this race. So really at this point, I was just settling into the race. I was just trying to find some grip. Obviously, it's not actively raining at this point. It is just a very wet track, but there are some dry patches starting to form in certain areas. So it's just a case of trying to hunt those out, find where the grip is, whilst also trying to sort of push on and hopefully build a gap to the guys behind, which is what we're actually able to do. Both of us are able to get a really big gap to everybody behind us. Now, as I mentioned before in previous videos, these are timed races, which is why there's only 6 laps for this race. So the lap count will differ depending on, you know, whether it's wet and we do longer laps and things like that. That's the reason that they are timed races for something like this when it occurs, so we aren't sort of out there for ages messing everything up. Now, the reason that there's only 16 people in this race is that we had to split the heats. So basically what happened is that in total numbers we had 31 people turn up for the event. Turn up for round 3 this is. We had 31 people turn up for it. Now we can only get a maximum of 30 people on the track at any one time. So unfortunately it was just that one extra person where we had to split it up. So we all went out, did our qualifying, and the heats were then split up based on the qualifying times. So the top qualifier was in one heat, the second place qualifier was in the next heat, and then, you know, it would just be sort of filtered down like that. So that's why there's only 16 people. Whilst this is going on, you know, when we came off and did after our first heat, the other group would then go out and do their first heat. So yeah, it's a little bit more complicated doing it like this, and really it's not quite as fun because you're not racing against as many people. You know, out of 16 people, say the top 5 are all on the same pace. If everybody was together, out of the 30 people, you know, the top 10 would all be on the same pace, so you'd get better racing. So it was a bit of a shame that we had to do it like that, but that's what it was. So yeah, just keep in mind that there is another group doing their races as well in between us, and they actually did their race whilst it started to rain. So that's why there's such a big difference in the track conditions between the first heat and the second heat. It's because there was an entirely different race going on in between the two. So yeah, that's just to explain what that was all about. Now here we are, this is the third lap of only 6 laps, because as you can see we're doing 1 minute 36, 1 minute 34 lap times, which are pretty significant because it is so slippy, and I'm managing to find a little bit of grip. You know, I'm starting to get into it a little bit more, settle into the race, find a few areas where it is starting to dry up a little bit more, and I am gradually making my way, catching up, as you can see here. Now again, it doesn't matter that I don't overtake him, I don't need to overtake him, and I'm not going to make any stupid moves, but I get a really good run out of that corner, as you see there. Just catch a little bit of grip on the inside, and I also do the same here as he goes and slides a bit wide there. Now I am careful because I don't want to be hitting him, I don't want to be knocking him off or anything, because we're both set to get maximum points and win our individual races, but he ends up on the inside there, just turns a little bit too much and ends up spinning around. So I managed to go into the lead there, get the overall lead, and I've got a huge gap behind me at this point. You know, we both had a big gap to the guys behind. He managed to get turned back around and finish in second place overall in the race. So really it made no difference to either of our races what happened there. You know, it made absolutely no difference, but ultimately in the end I was able to finish this race in the lead. Amazingly, my camera decided to cut out at the end of this lap, so I didn't get the whole race in, but nothing really happens after this. And this video itself is a little bit shorter than we normally have because I do pretty well, so there's not a lot of action to really show you guys. So that's 2 races and 2 victories. That's pretty cool. You know, I don't normally do that. So yeah, it's been successful so far. It does make it a little bit. It does take away from it a little bit that, you know, we were split up. So I'm only racing against half the people who were really there. But nevertheless, you know, you can only race against the people who you're with, and it's not to say that there aren't very good racers in this heat as well. So very happy with that. You know, 2 wins straight off the bat. 2 races, 2 wins. Really nice to have that straight away. And for the 3rd race, as you can see, it has started to dry up. It does still look a little bit wet on the track, but it is reasonably grippy and reasonably dry in most places. And again, because I won the previous race, I'm starting on pole position. There's an example of the good start that I normally get on pole position that I didn't get the last time. You know, just put the power on at the perfect moment and I'm able to just drive away. Just catch people by surprise, really. I did almost get caught out a little bit by the wet patch on the inside of that corner, but as you can see, you know, on most of the parts of the track, although there are some damp patches, it is dry lines everywhere and just there's the standard racing line. So I got a reasonably good start and I just pull away from everybody, and this is a race where I got pretty much the biggest margin of victory that I think I've ever had in any race throughout the entirety of me doing this. I was just, you know, really enjoying the driving. I was just flat out all the time. I was really pushing as well. I don't know why, I was just in that sort of mood and that zone. And I ended up about 12 or 13 seconds ahead of the guy who was in second place by the end of the race. And you'll be able to see at the end of the video, at the end of this section of the video showing this race, sort of the margin of victory that it is. And it's quite pronounced, you know, as I'm coming around I can't really explain it. You'll see it anyway. I'll explain it when we see when we see it on the footage, because I can't really explain it here. But yeah, it was huge, and when I looked back and just saw it near the end, I was quite surprised. So I was feeling good, you know. I was on form. I was pretty happy with my performance, and it's amazing what you can do when you get given the chance to have it. You know, I've talked in the previous episode about the kart performances and how they are so vastly different. And it always seems to be that in a lot of cases, if I have a decent kart, I'm always fighting my way back up through the pack after having a bad kart in a previous race and being sort of further down the pack. So it's amazing to see what you can do when you've got a reasonably decent kart and you're just out front putting in the lap times. You'll see here the sort of the margin of victory that it ends up being. Because as we're coming on to the final lap here, there are some sections on the track where you can see the other karts in certain areas, and it is a pretty pronounced gap. So yeah, I was feeling good, you know. I was enjoying it. I was enjoying what I was doing at the time, and that was sort of 3 for 3, you know. 3 races, 3 wins. Can't really ask for more than that. This is where you'll see people come around on the right hand side there, just a little glimpse. That's sort of the difference. And then also you'll see people coming out of the chicane just ahead of us when I'm coming around after the last hairpin as well. So yeah, you can see that sort of in different areas. But yeah, I was feeling good, you know. I was enjoying it, and for the final, everybody comes back together. So basically what happens is there's a B final for all of the sort of lower half of each of the 2 groups, and then there's an A final for the upper half of each of the 2 groups as well. Now in the other races, Smithy won 12 from the Multiclass Endurance Championship, who also races here. I mentioned him in the previous episode of this series as well. He'd actually won all of his races as well in the other group. So going into the final, we were both on maximum points. Now I actually started in pole position for the final through virtue of having the quickest time in qualifying. So I had a better time than he did in the qualifying, so I started on pole position for the final. Normally it's based on the amount of points you accrue throughout the 3 races, but obviously we were both on maximum points at this point, so yeah, we couldn't really decide it through that. So it's amazing how this is an exact carbon copy of episode 11 of the 2014 series. It's called Almost Perfect. Now if you remember back to that point, you probably remember exactly what happens, but if you haven't, definitely go watch that after you've watched this, because it's amazing how similar the races are. But as you can see, you know, I get another good start, which I always seem to be able to do, put the power on at the right time, get into the lead. But then at this point, as I start getting hit in the back there, I start to doubt whether this is going to go as well as what I'd hoped it would be. Again, remember last episode I was talking about it, I've never won one of these finals. I've never had a first place trophy. It's the one thing that I really want. And as we're coming into here, this is where I kind of should be kicking myself a little bit, because Smithy gets a better run on me here. He started in second place. I tried to sort of compromise him going into there, but he sort of parks on the apex. There's not a lot I can really do at that point, and I'm into second. Now, it's amazing how it's exactly the same as what happened in episode 11 of the 2014 series. When you go back and watch that, if you want to go, you know, go back and watch it to remind yourself. I get overtaken in the final from second to I was in the lead of the final. I got overtaken in the final at exactly the same place. I didn't defend the inside, and I get overtaken in exactly the same place. It was from somebody different, but the outcome was exactly the same. And at this point, as I sort of come to the straight and see him start to drive away from me on the straight a little bit there, as you can see, I start to realise that it's not really my day once again, because I'm just not going to have the pace in this kart. At that point I get a little bit hit in the back, which sent me offline, and gives him the position. He actually realises what he's done there, you know, and got that place unfairly, so he lets me go back past, which is nice to see, because you don't see that very often in this championship, as we saw in the last episode, and as we're also going to see in the next episode as well. But yeah, he just at that point, I just needed to explain that you know, he did actually hit me in the back there, which is what sent me a little bit wide and allowed him to get up the inside there, and that's why I was able to get that second position back. So at this point, you know, I saw Smithy drive away from me down that main straight, and I thought, you know, I'm not going to be able to stick with him. It's amazing, you know. I would love to have a terrible kart in all 3 of the races, finish mid-pack in all 3 of the races, if it meant that I got a good kart for a final and I was able to win the final. I wouldn't be bothered about all of the other races. I wouldn't be bothered about losing out on all of those points. I just want to win one of these finals so much. But yeah, never mind. The rest of the race was a defensive performance, because everybody behind me was quicker than me, and I was really having to work hard to defend. Now, there were quite a few people behind me. I wasn't letting them get past me, and that allowed me to, on some laps, have a bit of a buffer to those guys, because they were fighting with each other. There were some close moments, you know, where people were right behind me, as you'll see here. I think they're right close, yeah, as you can see there, and I have to defend on the inside going to the first corner. But ultimately I was able to defend the whole race and stay in second place, which was an achievement really, considering I was sort of down on power, if you like. You know, the karts behind me were quicker, so I was pretty happy to get that second place. One of the karts that was behind me was actually the kart that I won the previous race on. You know, with the huge win that I got, I was 12 seconds ahead at the end of the race. That was one of the karts that was directly behind me trying to get past. So yeah, I was having to defend against quicker karts, but you know, that's part of it, I suppose. It's just a shame that it did end up happening like that in the final, when I just want to win one of these. So, but never mind, you know, well done to Smithy. He ended up, I think, getting a 1 minute 6.2 lap time, so you know, a full second quicker than what I was able to do in this kart. So there was no way I was going to be able to stick with him, and it would have been very difficult to keep him behind. But ultimately, that was my mistake, you know, letting him through on the inside on the first lap. He told me at the end that he used a bit of, you know, just experience, that the tyres aren't going to be quite as warm as what they normally would. You know, he just backed off a little bit going into this corner that we're coming up to now and got a better exit out of it. So that enabled him to get up the inside. It was just, you know, I should be kicking myself for allowing that to happen again. And again, if you go back and watch the 11th episode of the 2014 series, I will link it in the description. It's exactly the same thing that happened. I won the first 3 races, I was on pole position for the final, and I get overtaken on the first lap in exactly the same place. It's unbelievable. Do you know, I'm never ever going to let that happen again. If I'm ever in pole position on any race and someone's even remotely close to me, I'm going to be making sure that I'm going to be defending that inside line on that corner. You know, never going to be making that mistake again, because it has been costly. And I was pretty annoyed about it at the time, but ultimately to be able to keep that second place, get a trophy for that, it was a reasonably good performance. And also just the whole round in general was very good. To have 3 race wins and then a second place, only 3 points less than the maximum points that I could have got at all. Smithy, on the other hand, did manage to get maximum points, as you'll see in the championship table, the full 200 points for him. I was on 197 from this round, still heading the championship, but it is a little bit deceptive at this point in the season, because, you know, people who've missed a round, that won't really count at the end of the season, because you only keep your best 8. But I will explain that as we go through the season, and it is just there for sort of reference anyway. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching, guys. I really do appreciate all of your support on these videos. This has been a bit of a shorter one because it was a successful one, I guess. You can leave all your comments down below, let me know what you think. And yeah, I'll try to get the next one out soon, because it has already happened. So thanks a lot for watching, everyone. I really do appreciate it, and I'll see you next time.